Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here's your host, Mike Pelaia.
Welcome everybody to another edition of Steel Nation Radio, brought to you by Total Sports Enterprises. I'm Mike Pelaia of SteelNationAssociation.com, where we cover the Steelers 24/7 while bringing you, the Steeler fans, together in an effort to raise money for Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh and the Breast Cancer Research Foundation. So please visit our site, read the articles, listen to the podcasts, join the club, go to our store, help us raise money for both of those charitable causes. And as always, you can find my work along with many other talented columnists at SteelCityUnderground.com, where the Steeler coverage is fantastic. Articles, podcasts, giveaways, contests, anything you can think of regarding the Steelers, you will find at SteelCityUnderground.com. So please visit either site and get all the Steelers coverage you need. All right, let's get into it. So we've got Steelers coming off a loss after 6 consecutive wins, a loss in Denver. And if you had read my game preview and my article last week leading up to the game, I predicted a win, but I did mention in both articles that I wrote, I didn't record last week, but I would have said the same thing if I had, that it was a dangerous game. And the Broncos going into that game at 4-6 were a far better team than what their record had indicated. They had 4 of those 6 losses to the Rams, the Texans, and the Chiefs twice by a total of 16 points. Those 3 teams, 4 losses, are to the cream of the crop of the league, quite frankly, especially when you talk about the Rams and the Chiefs. I mean, you saw what the Chiefs did to the Steelers earlier in the season. Now, I'm not saying they would do that today, but that's, a comparable that we have. So I thought the Broncos were definitely dangerous at a minimum, and they won. Now, what I did get out of that game is the Steelers are the better team. They did shoot themselves in the foot many times, and my article earlier this week, it talks about that. That is going to be the Steelers' biggest hindrance moving forward this year. The rest of the way is the mistakes. They had 4 turnovers. They had fumble by James Conner, which just didn't make sense. The fumble by Xavier Grimble going into the end zone, you can't do that. You can't do that. The 2 picks by Ben, especially the one in the end zone to end the game, you just can't do that. And quite frankly, calling the RPO at the end of the game, which is not something they run very often, in my opinion, at least, it didn't make sense by Randy Fichtner as well, but the turnovers are a problem. They're a problem, one, because you don't ever want to turn over the ball. It's going to happen, but you don't want to turn it over. Roethlisberger's got 12 picks through 11 games. I mean, not great. He called himself a gunslinger on his show this week, and that's fine. I think he is, and I'm not going to complain about Roethlisberger at all. They're in the position they are, first place in the AFC North because of him. So, I'll go down that road in a minute. But this is going to cost them down the line if they cannot start, one, reducing those turnovers, especially those types of fumbles. You can't do that. Connor's got to be better than that. He's got a couple of fumbles now in recent weeks that, not to bring it up, but Le'Veon Bell just would not do. He wouldn't do. Connor does fumble at a higher rate than Bell. That's just the truth. But 2, their defense is not getting the turnovers. And if you can't get turnovers, that's a problem. That's a problem. They rank 26th in the league in giveaway takeaway ratio. The only teams below them are terrible teams. Terrible teams. The Eagles, who, they're good, but they have a terrible record. The Bucks, the 49ers, the Cardinals, I think it was, the Jets. I mean, it's all teams of that ilk. The Steelers are not of that ilk, but they're grouped with them right now because they're not creating turnovers. Nobody has more than 1 interception on this team. That can't happen. That cannot happen. And I know the secondary is weak, but they have got to find somebody to pick that ball off. They've got to create fumbles. They've got to do something to flip-flop the field position. Because when they play Tom Brady and the Patriots, Drew Brees and the Saints, Phillip Rivers this week and the Chargers, Go into the playoffs, you're going to face many good quarterbacks. God forbid if you went to the Super Bowl and you had to face the Rams, or if somehow Aaron Rodgers got in there, or Pat Mahomes again, before the Super Bowl. This is the area that's going to kill them if they cannot create the turnovers. So they need to start doing that this week. Now, I need to circle back to this whole Roethlisberger thing. I've been seeing a lot of ridiculous comments and hearing a lot of ridiculous comments on the radio and on social media about Roethlisberger being the problem. One, first of all, they lost for the first time since September. All right, let's recognize that. Two, Roethlisberger is one of the best quarterbacks in the league, top 5 minimum. You could even argue top 3, 4, something like that, but let's say top 5. And they're in first place because of him, hands down. I'm sorry, I like Josh Dobbs, but they're not in the same position with Josh Dobbs. They're not in the same position with Mason Rudolph. If Landry Jones were here, if you took Blake Bortles, any of those guys, I mean, you take Eli Manning or even his counterpart this week, Rivers. I don't think the Steelers are in the same position, and I think Rivers is a good quarterback. Roethlisberger leads this team, period. He does. So the comments are ridiculous. I even saw some Bench Ben comments. Are you freaking kidding me? Bench Ben? Morons. You're just morons if you think that. I can't even acknowledge this anymore. It's just stupid. Stop that talk. Stop that talk now. So, let's go on to this week. The Chargers come into town. The Chargers are a good football team. Worthy of a first-place record at 8-3. But they play in the Chiefs division. So they're not in first place. But they're playing their butts off. And I see them as a problem. Now, I think the Steelers will win. I think because they're playing on Sunday night at home. They're coming off a loss. I think they will win. I think the Chargers are lucky that the game was moved from 1 p.m. to 8:20. Obviously, as a West Coast team, that's beneficial. But I do think that the Steelers will end up winning this game. I think it'll be 34-30. It's not going to be an easy one. It's going to be close. It'll come down to the line. But that's why it's a Sunday night football game, right? This was a premier matchup. I will be in the booth for that game, the press box, I should say. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing some action firsthand from the press box and seeing some of the plays unfold and exactly what the Steelers will do offensively. I think will be very exciting to see from that level. And what I think they'll do is I think they'll get back to some running the football. Now, the Chargers have a top 10 defense, and they have a really good scoring defense. They're only allowing 19.9 points per game. The Steelers are around 22 points per game, just for reference. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Steelers attack that defense. I think they are going to go back to more of the James Conner. I really do. Roethlisberger's fantastic, and you've got JuJu, you got AB, you got Vance McDonald, you got the weapons. But I said this earlier in the season, when he throws it over 40 times, and it was well over 40, it was over 50 this past week, usually they lose. Conner only got 13 touches against the Broncos. But, by the way, he averaged 4.1 yards per carry. So, to me, it says that they should have run the ball another 12 to 15 times with Conner. I think that what was lost in translation for some reason in that game plan was the ball control aspect of James Conner carrying the football, especially if he's going to get 4 yards a clip, which I think he can and will do against the Chargers. He needs to be given that ball 25 times this week because the Chargers have an explosive offense. The Steelers' defense is not really right now capable of creating turnovers. The secondary is a little bit weak. Control the ball, control the clock, and that's what they're going to do, and they need to do with James Conner this week. So I do expect them to do that. Now, I'm not saying Roethlisberger's not going to get his yards or his throws. He's going to throw for 300 yards this week. He's going to throw a couple of touchdowns. He's probably going to throw big. I mean, at this point, get used to at least one a game. That's fine. But you got to go through Conner. You have to. You've got one of the best offensive lines, if not the best in the game. Use them for what their skills are. It's not just pass blocking. They can rush the football, and they're going to. Now, defensively, they're going to have their hands full with Phillip Rivers. He's completed close to 70% of his passes, over 3,000 yards, 26 TDs, only 6 picks. So he's not the gunslinger that Ben is. in that regard. But he makes some really good throws. And against the Steelers secondary, he can make them pay. The Steelers need to get a pass rush on him. They need to make him throw the ball quickly. He doesn't have his top running back this week. Melvin Gordon's out. However, Austin Eckler, I think, is actually pretty good. He's averaging 5.8 yards per carry compared to Gordon's 5.2. Now, he has 83 less carries. But still, he's got enough carries with 70 and 409 yards that say, hey, he can play a little bit. He can play a little bit. So I think the Steelers need to watch out for Eckler and don't overlook that. I actually think he'll be a part of the Chargers' game plan. So I hope the Steelers are ready for that. I hope they're ready for that. Keenan Allen and Tyrell Williams, the top two receivers for the Chargers, are definitely guys they're going to have to watch out for. I think they're just going to have that pass rush to help the pass defense as well, specifically the secondary. I just don't know what they're capable of. I don't really want to see them go over the top. Phillip Rivers can do that. He can do that. So I think you're going to see a heavy, heavy pass rush. I don't think they're going to stack the box because it is Eckler. It's not Gordon. And you've got Rivers as a quarterback. So I don't think they can stack the box. So I think that, Eckler's going to be a big part of the Chargers game plan. The Steelers have to be ready for that. But they really need to rush Phillip Rivers and force him to get rid of the ball quickly so he's not throwing it 20 yards down the field. Because 20 yards down the field, you've got problems. You've got problems. So if they can create a turnover or two, protect the football, run the football, get the ball out of Rivers' hands quickly, I think the Steelers have a game plan for success this week. It will be high scoring. It's going to be back and forth. It's a Sunday night football game in Pittsburgh in cold weather. So be ready. It's going to be fun. It's going to be close. But the Steelers are going to come out with a victory 34-30. So that's it for me this week. Let's talk next week, hopefully after another Steelers victory.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.